Welcome back, everyone. My name is Carly Whitefield. I'm the Assistant Curator of Film at TATE Modern, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to the Star Cinema for our series Tropicália and Beyond, Dialogues in Brazilian Film History, curated by Stefan Solomon. I will keep this very short as we have a wonderful returning audience and you don't need to hear the same spiel every time, but I will go through our thank yous very quickly to Andrea Lisoni, Senior Curator of Film, to Maria Gilbert, Curatorial Assistant. We have wonderful AV support from Sebastian and Lauren, and also for the next two screenings we have Camila Reveredo helping us with the soft titling of films. So thank you so much to Camila as well. And I just wanted to make one quick technical note, because we have two films back to back on 35mm film. After the second film, there'll be roughly a 1 minute pause as we run the tail and the leader between the film. But that'll just be a quick 1 to 2 minute break. And yeah, without any further ado, I'd like to welcome Stefan Solomon to introduce the screening.
Well, thank you, and welcome again to another session in this series, Tropicália and Beyond. This is a session that I'm really excited about. It's a session essentially of 4 found footage films from the past 20 years. We begin with Confidente by the couple Karen Akerman and Miguel Seabra Lopes, which incorporates a lot of interesting actualities and images from the films of Humberto Mauro. Then we have the film Glaucis, Estudo de Rosto, about Glauci Rocha. We saw Glauci Rocha in Terra Entranza on Thursday night, and this film focuses on her career before and after Terra Entranza, focusing especially on her gestures, on her movements, and in her appearances over the course of a couple of decades. But finally, we have 2 films from a filmmaker I've grown to know over the course of curating this series, Carlos Adriano. And it's been a pleasure to have been in discussions with Carlos about his films and to have thought and talked about his films over the course of the last year. I've seen many of his films, if not almost all of them. And there are other wonderful films of Carlos's that we won't be able to show, but the 2 that we have, I think, work very well together and give at least a glimpse into his career as a filmmaker who works with archival images in a very particular way. So the first film is Vassourinha, The Voice in the Void in English, about a young samba singer who may be quite obscure in the history of samba. And the second film is Dance of Light Fossil, sem titulo número 1 in the series of films with the Sem Titulo series, Untitled. And this one is the first of those 3. And those are made, Vassourinha from 1998 and Sem Titulo número 1, Dance of Light Fossil from 2014. So we'll see quite a variety, I think, of found footage gestures which have become something of commonplace in Brazilian filmmaking over the last 20 years, especially with the dawn of the digital age and access to images. Found footage filmmaking has certainly found its niche in Brazil, but Carlos has been working in this mode for quite a long time. It's interesting also to think about these films in light of the way that the archive works and the difficulty of accessing images at times in the archive, and especially in Brazil. So we'll have time to talk. I'll be discussing Carlos's films with him after the screening, and we'll have time also to ask him some questions about his process. But for now, please enjoy this screening. Thank you. Wow, that was really moving.
I'm completely fucked up.
I am too, and I don't even have the same connection to the film.
It's a beautiful program.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your curating.
Thank you for being part of this, and it's been wonderful having conversations with Carlos, even over email, and I hadn't met him until 2 days ago. But he trusted me enough to carry his film Vassourinha back from São Paulo in a canister. And it arrived here safely, thank God. But it's so wonderful that you've made these films and that we were able to share them. So I wonder, maybe we can, there's a lot to discuss, but maybe we can just talk about how your career started, how you started working with these images, and because Vassourinha is 1998, but you started working with archival images before a long time before then.
In my first beginning of filmmaking, I tried to make something like unknown or forgotten materials of Brazilian film culture or Brazilian film history or Brazilian film culture. And Vassourinha is a setup in a gap. He's between Orlando Silva, João Gilberto. He's something in a mind, a blind spot, let's say. It's not a blind spot because, of course, it's not, you can hurt. But, enfim. And for me, it was very interesting to take this one, this sign, and to try to translate in visual forms. And afterwards, it became so complicated because it's not so easy to transform the mute music or the forgotten music in something aural or visual imagery. And the film tries to grasp between a huge amount of visual information, but you cannot read the information. But that's not the point, if you can read or not. The point is if you can feel or not the information, the visual and the oral information. And how you can grasp a voice which felt in oblivion, and you can try to make it alive. Because for me it's not interesting Vassourinha is a very great singer. That's not the point. The point is, he has something to tell us or not. That's the point. And then we can go to the second film.
But as well, I wonder about Vassourinha. He still seems obscure. I know that if you look online for information, it's not as easy to find as you would expect.
It's not part of the history of Brazilian music.
Still not 20 years after your film.
I cannot do anymore. Do you like that? I was invited to write a book about Vassourinha and to make a documentary film because I am a little bit lazy. I cannot do anything beyond. That's the point, beyond this one. Why we Brazilians despise our cultural heritage? That's a question I always make in all of my films, because we are so rich in Santos Dumont, Vassourinha, Miesco Café, Monteiro Lobato, but we have, the Brazilian ourselves have a huge capacity of despise our cultural heritage. I don't know why. It's a self-despisement, I don't know.
Do you want to say something? I mean, maybe some of our audience don't know the history of Cunha Salles or of Santos Dumont and your films about those figures.
No. No, because it's a very complicated history, and
Okay.
you have to try to show. Perhaps in
Another
occasion,
time.
another time you can show the film because you go to another strength. No, it's too
Okay.
complicated. It's too complicated. The point is why we cannot, and that is a question I made to myself yesterday and before when we said the Global Russia film. Why we cannot deal with our cultural heritage? Why? Because the Brazilian cultural heritage and history is so rich and so potential and so revolutionary. Fora Temer, aliás. And why? We cannot go there. I don't know why. I don't know why.
No, but all of your films try to retrieve something of that heritage. I think most of your films, in one way or another, from the archives as well.
But it's a failure.
No,
It's a failure.
because it's
It's definitely a failure. Like Mallarmé, it's a throw of dice. We cannot do anything. It's very difficult to cope with a huge system. Of course, we can take art as a sort of revenge. It's not a thing. It's a sort of revenge. But it's condemned to failure.
it's impossible to work with everything in the archive.
Definitely.
Maybe, I mean, your second film that we saw here, which I was really looking forward to sharing with everyone, Dance of Light Fossil. It's a bit of a different thing because the images aren't from Brazilian film history, but you're still very connected to this film in a different way. Would you like to talk about the importance of the different images there, not just of Fred and Ginger, but of Bernardo as well?
This film is a sort of labor of love, labor of mourning, when luto, mourning, and it's just a simple question. I would like to make Ginger and Fred to dance a fado for him, simply, and just to make a possible chance to make me breathe and still alive. It's just simple like that. Cinema is not responsible for all that, but I try to do that. And I think that cinema is possible, is a way of thinking and making to not only realize about ourselves, but to make our thinking, our destiny, let's say, not so clear, but it's so difficult to say, because without that film, I will not be here. Perhaps I could meet suicide, or perhaps I will go like Mayakovsky and something like that. Because in this film, I am an atheist, and I thought it was an illumination to get this grasp, to put Fred and Ginger to dance fado music completely, I think is 15 years beyond. Beyond. That's the time. Beyond the word.
After Vassourinha.
After Vassourinha. No, and after because the Ginger and Fred dance routine was made in 1936, and Ana Moura Fado is 2012. It's almost 15 years afterwards. So, why this is possible? Only cinema made this possible. And my inquire is why this is possible to make cinema and to make us alive and breathe. It's not a simple question, of course, but I try to go with my own terms about that. Of course, for me, it's not so clear, not so clear at all. That's why I made the film. Otherwise, I would not made it.
And there are two other films in that series of the Untitled series that follow on as part of your biopic.
Yes, definitely.
Which we didn't have time to show, but which are just as beautiful.
Thank you so much. But if I... como é que eu tenho vergonha na cara?
Na cara.
Vergonha na cara. If I have a shame on my face, I will not make any films anymore. Because it's very difficult to do anything after this one. It's a very interesting way to end up with filmmaking.
But it's so amazing for me and to see this film. And after having seen it lots of times and to know that it's a part of, it's a ritual of mourning for you.
A Joseph Boy situation.
But to be able to share that with other people as well, it's phenomenal that seems so simple in terms of the combination of images.
But for me, it's not so easy.
No.
Not at all.
And I can see that.
Not at all. Yeah. Even now,
Sure.
4 years afterwards. Because cinema, we can do almost everything, but not everything. People can... these persons are ghosts. They don't live anymore. I would like they were not ghosts. Sorry.
No.
It's a deep emotion, but
I know.
Because the film is very structural in a way, very radical and very frame by frame editing. I spend a lot of, I think, 2 years and a half to edit this 5-minute film. But there is a lot of emotion in this one. And this operation of thinking about emotional thing and rational thing, structural thing is very complicated.
And noticeably different, I think, to the first 2 films that we saw as well. I mean, Joel Pizzini works sometimes with archival images as well, but makes completely different films to your own, even if they're in a structural mode. I wondered maybe this would be a good opportunity to see if anyone in the audience has any questions for Carlos about his work, his practice.
Oh, a question.
There is a question.
I'm afraid.
2 wonderful films, thank you ever so much. We really all enjoyed seeing them, I'm sure. I just had a question about the first film, which is an amazing example of how to animate the archive in a way that seems really ahead of its time, actually. But the rhythmic qualities that you've achieved with all the different rostrum work and the different kinds of views of the newspaper articles and the records, to what extent was that planned at the stage when you were filming the rostrum footage of the newspaper material? And to what extent was that developed in the editing process?
Definitely. This first film was made completely in the so-called analog film in 35 millimeters. I used an Oxberry animation tabletop. And I tried to explore almost everything in this situation of Oxberry 35 millimeter optical print. And definitely it changed completely our mind when you are going to shoot an analog and digital. Because I always take my films as long, endure, as a love making. Is a fucking up. I of course I have to do this, and in this analog film, 35mm, it's very sensible to do that, because you can touch the film strip, you can put the film strip in the front of lenses, you can make everything, and in the digital you can do that, because it's, of course, in the digital you have a calculation of binary things, 0 and 1, and if the projection collapses, Dance of Life Fossil is not possible to be screened, because it's not a film physically completely understand. And then if there is any catastrophe, you cannot do that. And that's why I like to have my films transferred to 35mm as possible, but I am a poor filmmaker and I can't do that. In this sense, it's very important to have this kind of approach. And when you have in this Vassourinha kind of mode, I have all sorts of albums, footages, and film clips, journal clips, newspaper clips, photo clips, etc., etc. So it's very important to have this kind of touch very close. And I think, for me tonight, it's very clear to realize that this touchable approach was connected to the emotional result, I would say. Of course, there is not implies that in the light fossil there is no that, but it's another thing. But I was able to feel and live with the Vassourinha memoirs for 1 year or 2 years. And that when I go to the Oxbury lab, to the optical printer, that completely changed my mind, because I have to touch, I have to put this on the lens. And that's a different thing. You have to touch, tactile. Tactile. It's very important for me, and I think it's a quality I treasure most. And of course, I cannot touch other things as I would like to.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Carlos?
Hi, Carlos. Thank you for these amazing films.
Thank you.
Actually wanted to ask you about the music in the second film, this amazing fado, which is super sad and at the same time is very happy. And I think it explains very well the concept of saudade, which is I think it just exists in Portuguese language, I'm not sure, which is this kind of sadness in which you feel happy of being sad. So I was wondering if you
What the fuck is this?
I was just wondering if you could comment a bit on that. If you feel...
I think it's very difficult to say something about that, because there is a myth that the saudade word, there is only exists in Portuguese, because we have this word in Russian and other languages. The point is, what about the feeling, the mood? I'm not so sure about the if there is a typical or a specific mood about saudade or about feeling something like that. The point is, we can name it, we can target or not. Perhaps saudade is a nickname for another. Perhaps Freud can help us. How and why we can name it? I cannot name it, so that's why I made this film. This film is made of of course it's not a therapy, but it's a sort of. I made it after a personal disaster, catastrophe. Of course, you can see that. I'm a widower, but it's not the point how to name it or not. How you can feel that. And my point is, there is a feeling, and the main thing, cinema is a sort of como que é aquela língua, a língua universal.
Universal language.
There is a sort of a myth of universal language. How you can put all these feelings in the same gap. I don't know if it's possible to do that. Perhaps cinema is an universal language, image and sound, but I'm not so sure about that. I'm sorry, I can't provide you a better explanation, because for me it's very difficult to otherwise I will not make the film. I think that's why I said, if I have a shame on my face, vergonha na cara, I will not make any film anymore, because almost everything I would like to say is put on this screen, completely. Simple way, just way, complex, but why to do? How can I say anything more than that? Sorry.
Thank you so much.
But you continue to make beautiful films. You've made films since then about Desio Pinatari.
I regret.
Surely not. And about Paulo Emilio?
Paulo Emilio Salles Gomes is an obligation, because it was a command. And since I made films about found footage, and there's a special tone about the archive films, forgotten or unknown materials of forgotten film, when I was invited last year to make a command on the centenary of Paulo Emilio Salles Gomes, who is the how can I say?
Founder, yeah.
Yes, founder of Cinemateca Brasileira, and I cannot refuse that, but that's another point. Of course, I like to do that, but yes, it's a good film.
Yeah, I think so. You're too modest.
No, I am not.
Any final question for Carlos?
Okay, thank you very much for these two beautiful films, and for the other ones in the session, which were excellent, which was an excellent session. I'm just wondering, filmmaker Júlio Bressane has a text on Vassourinha, where he writes that Vassourinha has a cinema voice, and he analyzes some songs by Vassourinha talking about talking about the cinematic qualities of his songs. And knowing that you and Giulio Bressane have a close relationship, I'm wondering what is the relation between your film and his text?
In fact, I think Giulio has never seen my film about Vassouri. Of course, that's completely crazy and amazing, but I think it's a matter of fact.
It's true.
I think, unfortunately, it's true. I think Giulio has never seen. And my film, as you can see by the end titles, there is a special acknowledgement to Giulio Bressani. And I decided to make the film after reading his essay about Vassourinha. And I went beyond.
Thank you.
Great.
It's enough or not enough? No, perhaps it's not enough. I don't know. No, I don't know. I think in the film there are several shots are tribute to Giulio Bressani work, because Vassourinha is my third film, and I have just organized it and edited this book you mentioned, Giulio Bressani CD Poetica. And of course I was very deeped and influenced by Giulio. He is a key influence of my filmmaking and my, in fact, I am hesitating to say that because I will not tell this in public.
Careful, because we're recording.
Recording?
Yes.
So I will not. If you can turn off, I can say. But anyway, Giulio Bressani is a key influence of my filmmaking and my life and whatever, but provided it's on record, I cannot go along. But
You can tell people afterwards.
perhaps.
Yes.
With a vodka. I try to elaborate some tropes of Giulio Bressani film work. Let's say on the cemetery, you have a great pan on the trees. Is a completely homage to Bressani works. A lot of films of Giulio Bressani has these shots of the trees upside down, etc. And in this film it's just a little. But this film was made. In fact, I would like to dedicate to him, and here I'm dedicated to him. I cannot do this anything before that, and he was not able to see that. But here publicly in London, he lived here with Rosa Diaz and Andrea Tonacci, who are very fond of friends of me. So I take this opportunity to dedicate this film to Giulio. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
And now Giulio will have to see the film.
Perhaps.
Okay, well, thank you to Carlos. We have another session here at 6 p.m. where we'll be seeing A Idade da Pedra by Ana Vaz, followed by Glauber Rocha's final film, A Idade da Terra, The Age of the Earth. It will be a really exciting evening where we'll be doing something completely different with that film and playing the reels out of order, which to my knowledge has not been done in that way, so explicitly. So please join us again for that. But now, do join me in thanking Carlos Adriano.
Thank you, all of you. I'm sorry for my English is a little bit rusty.
It's fine.
Of course, I'm